Hello and welcome back to the Vaultcast, the podcast where I, your host George, interview professional endurance athletes, race organisers and industry experts. On this episode, I'm joined by Dan Dixon, a 20-year-old triathlete who represented Team England at this year's Commonwealth Games. We talk about Super League Triathlon, his junior career, and what the jump is like to racing as a senior. Since recording this episode, Dan achieved his goal of breaking 30 minutes in the 10K at Ribble Valley. So without further ado, let's jump in to the vault. Welcome, Dan, to the podcast. So, for everyone who doesn't know you, can you please introduce yourself?
I am 20 years old. I'm a British triathlete. I've been saying for a while I'm based in Northumberland. I think probably more and more in America now. But yeah, very much born and raised in Northumberland. And yeah, turning kind of towards becoming a professional triathlete now.
Yeah, so how did you first get into triathlon?
Well, that was like through my dad. Basically, he used to compete in Ironman triathlon. He was a runner as well, but he competed in the World Championships in Kona. And yeah, I mean, that was kind of my first knowledge of the sport. And so, yeah, I tried my first one when I was about 9 or 10 years old at a school in Darlington in the Northeast. And yeah, I actually won it, but I think that probably gave me the bug to keep going back. But yeah, back in those days, there wasn't many like kids triathlons. Certainly wasn't many competitors, but yeah, times have changed a lot now. There's definitely a lot more races and a lot more competitors at those early events, which is nice to see.
Yeah, so obviously since then, like you said, you caught the bug and you carried on training. And then moving, like if you fast forward all the way to this year, you ended up competing in the Commonwealth Games at the age of 20 years old. So
Yeah.
how was that, like the lead up to the Commonwealth Games when you finally got selected?
Yeah. Well, it was quite full on. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't build a I wouldn't build a chat for the entire lead up from that initial triathlon. That was quite some time ago, but um, yeah, it was a real whirlwind year this year, especially those initial like 6 months of the season were exceptionally full on. Like I just kept opening doors to like different opportunities really quickly. Just because obviously in Britain you have selection policies and all these criteria that you have to hit, etc. And I was hitting things at a pretty quick rate, and it basically just opened doors and obviously given opportunities in places as well. And yeah, off the back of my performances, pretty much just in the first 6 months of this year, it opened up that window to like at least put my name in the hat for being on that list. And so, yeah, I'd been put on the long list at the back end of last year, but obviously, like, there's lots of people on the long list. So getting on the short list is the hard thing. So yeah, I kind of got my name per se in the short list. And yeah, the selections were made. Can't remember exactly when they were made. I think they were made a couple months out, and or certainly the discretionary selections, automatic ones, have been made a while ago. And yeah, I wasn't actually selected first time round, which was gutting. And yeah, I kind of refocused and pretty much went ahead to race two different events. Those being Pontevedra and the European Champs in Munich. So they were the big focus. Pontevedra was a week before Commonwealth Games, so obviously, like same sort of time period, give you enough time to prepare. And then yeah, be it it certainly wasn't lucky for Johnny, but opened up an opportunity, I guess, for me, which was that Johnny unfortunately crashed hard in Leeds, as did Alex, and yeah, the that kind of opened up that door to me. Johnny fought back pretty hard to try and get back on the start line. And to be honest with you, I was first reserve that whole period, which not really many people know. Um, and yeah, like I honestly thought it would be Johnny Brownlee. There's a good chance he's going to make it back. So I was very set on Pontevedra. Flights were booked, everything. And then, yeah, 2 weeks before I got a call saying, "Oh yeah, like Johnny, like can't do it. Like you're in." Like 2 weeks before, and it was like, holy crap! It was just, it was insane and just yeah, just mad. Like that next 2 weeks leading in was just crazy. Like going from like thinking I was going to Spain in a few days to like totally flipping everything on its head, and suddenly you're going to Kitten Out, and you're going down and like meeting with the England staff and all this stuff. Like it was just huge, that lead in. And I'm really grateful that I had the experience, because it was still far enough away from the event that like I had the ability to do all the normal things, like the Kitten Out, the media things, the team things. Like it made it like as if I had been normally selected.
Yeah.
So that was really, really nice. And yeah, I mean, what an opportunity that was.
Yeah, and if we like look back, you're actually quite an experienced racer already. Like
Mhm.
you've competed as a junior for GB. How much was your experience that you picked up as a junior competing internationally? How did that help you going into the Commonwealth Games?
Um, yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I think like the more I've learned this year, I think I've realized like, this year on the surface, for sure, biggest year. There's been plenty of ups and downs, but I mean, even if you just take the Commonwealth as an isolated example, um, it's nice to think that like the stuff that you've done just before it like made you really good on the day or whatever. But like, you look and like you say, I mean, I've raced for 10 years, and I really like to believe that everything along that like 10 years makes a big difference. Makes a difference to why I'm able to go at 20 to a Commonwealth Games. And so, yeah, I think though that last year as a junior, uh, I was exceptionally successful. I traveled all over the world, and yeah, I think like I had such a mix of experiences, two major championships as a junior. Like I went to European Cups, bit of French Grand Prix, basically just lots of different scenarios. But what I did do is I did a lot of like one day, one race type things, like very specific targets within the year. Uh, and so, yeah, the interesting thing is, I think that probably ultimately helped me refocus so quickly on Commonwealth Games. Like obviously World Juniors got cancelled last year, and then it got moved 3 weeks later to Kotera from Bermuda. So quite the change. But like in that same sort of respect, I got selected like two weeks or 20 days before or something, like before commies. That ability just to like change and then refocus quickly. And obviously, it's not quite that hard to focus when it's the Commonwealth Games. Like it's such a big thing that I'd already been working towards earlier in this season. That like it was quite easy to refocus, and it was exceptionally exciting. But yeah, I think going into this year, Commonwealth Games was definitely not on the cards. It was just something that was still a bit of a dream goal to try and get to this year. So the fact that I kind of ended up going was huge. And yeah, like I say, I think all the experiences kind of add up. I don't think there's one thing that makes like such a huge difference.
Yeah. So obviously, like you said, you moved up to seniors this year. How has the jump been from moving from a junior? Is it pretty much like a gradual increase in, or is it how have you found it?
Uh, it's definitely not a gradual increase. It's definitely a very like steep slope.
Yeah.
I think I did well to climb the initial part of that slope to get to the kind of the levels that I would like to race at. Like the kind of top levels in the sport, and trying to get towards those is like exceptionally difficult. So the fact that I managed to get towards, my name was on a World Series start list, but then like things slightly changed around with racing. And obviously I got into Super League and all these, did the Munich European Champs, like some huge, huge events. Obviously Commonwealth Games, Um, getting there is so difficult. But what you realize is it's like, I've done a good job of getting to where I managed to get to this season, but these guys at the very top, they are so flipping good. And you realize, like, that I mean, I do a little bit of writing for Try 247, and this will be kind of within something that I've just written, but I think you have to become a little bit more process orientated. Um, like even these guys like Alex and Hayden, who I look up to, who are, you know, 4 years older or so. Like there's not, it's a good age gap, but they're still in my head they're still very young, and yet they're having all this success. But then you realize it's like God, like they did, they had to do what I was doing right now, and then it's taken them another 3 or 4 years to get where they are now, and it's yeah, like just learning that there is a bit of a process involved. And I mean the standard of the sport, man, is just absolutely ridiculous at the top end. So I think for me, it's realizing that you ain't in juniors anymore, and generally there's more of like a process there. Um, you have to be a lot more patient, which again is hard being young. And so yeah, I think they are the really kind of big things, and yeah, I mean, the main difference, really, to be honest, it's pretty simple. It's just a hell of a lot faster. Like regardless of the professionalism, the travel, all of this stuff. When you like look at it simply, swim, bike, run, a triathlon event, wherever it is in the world, the top guys in the world are just simply significantly quicker than stronger than when you're a junior. So it's like it's learning to basically develop to get towards that top level.
Yeah, I really agree with like the thing about like you have to realize that at the moment you're still only 20, so there's like 3 or 4 years that you've got to be able to grow into the sport even more. And obviously,
Yeah.
like this year is your first year as a senior, and coming 12th at the commies is nothing to be scoffed at. Like that's such a great performance for
Mhm.
you now, but like imagine in 4 years you could be placing first, like up against Alex for the finish. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely like great. And also like as you touched on earlier, like the Super League aspect of racing, how has that kind of played into your experience at competing at this like senior level?
Uh, yeah. I mean, I think we'll see the main impact of Super League going into like next year. To be honest with you, and I think it's an evolution because I mean you're kind of getting now where you've got arena games at the start of the year, and you have the championship series kind of 3 quarters towards the end of the year. So I think what you're gonna see is like that, like just I don't think it has like this immediate, like you notice through the rounds that you get better and stuff, but I think where you'll really notice the difference is like going into next year, the amount of experience that you've picked up. Because I mean, ultimately, I only raced like one triathlon after, but I feel like after I did the arena games in Singapore, I learned quite a bit, and I did race afterwards, and then I went on and I raced exceptionally well. Um, I mean, I think with Super League, the interesting thing is like, you know, everything is so fast that any mistakes just cost you so much. Um, like you can get away with, you don't want to make mistakes in ITU, but like you can get away with a little bit of mistakes, in Olympic distance. You can get away, a little bit less mistakes in sprint distance, but ideally you don't want to be making mistakes, but you can get away with them a little bit and still put in exceptionally good performances. But in Super League, like if you lose, 2 seconds here and there, like that can be such a big difference. And I saw that amplified, and I think that's the thing. Like it, it basically amplifies like your mistakes, your weaknesses, and it just totally exposes them. And therefore, like having 5 rounds is excellent because it allows you to try and develop like each time, and it's different formats each time as well. So you're constantly you're trying to put in what you've learned, but then you're also learning new things, and it just challenges you mentally and physically so much. I mean, that's why, like, I mean, in Munich, like, I'm running out with with my helmet on one of the rounds on the run, and I'm like, what on earth am I doing? Like, it doesn't even make sense. And yet, like, you've got, triple Olympic medalist Johnny, who also does the same in Toulouse. Like, it mentally, it just totally throws you. It doesn't matter whether you're a junior, like 20-year-old like me, or a triple Olympic medalist. Like, you can make the same mistakes, and you're penalized for that. I think, like, ultimately that's the biggest thing, is that it forces you to be almost flawless and so consistent, and I think kind of adaptive as well, and just at such a quick speed though, so that therefore when you come back into the world triathlon race, and it's really weird, and a few people have said this, but it just feels like a little bit slow motion. Like, everything just feels like yeah, just odd. Like, you're still going very fast and it's still very hard, but like, it just, everything feels like so much more spread out and so much slower, and like the corners are easier and the transitions longer, and all this stuff. Like, it's it's interesting, and I think that's where, like, you take that flawless kind of consistency and ability to adapt, and then once you push that into world triathlon racing, I think that's why ultimately you look at the guys who are doing Super League, they're pretty, and the girls, like, they're the best in the world when they come back to the ITU as well.
Yeah, yeah. We the first episode that I ever released of this is with Jess Learmonth,
Yeah,
and she was talking about how just crazy the whole Super League thing is when like your small changeovers, if you forget to tie your laces, it's like a completely different thing. Like, or like
yeah,
not putting your hat in the box, and just like if you miss the box in the arena, then you've got to like you're gonna be penalised just for not putting it in a box and stuff like that. And she was just saying like all these small things like really help you when it comes to racing on like the world stage, because you're so used to everything being like, when you change over, you're so used to it being so intense that it actually feels a lot easier, even though you're still doing it at a high level.
yeah,
So
yeah. No, 100%. Yeah.
how do you find like the layout of Super League? Obviously, there's like loads of different ways of they race. They will sometimes do the run first and then do the swim, and then you're onto the bike. How do you find those layouts? Does that throw you at all when you were racing?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it definitely, it often throws you mentally more than anything,
Yeah,
because you're just not used to it. Your body can swim, bike, run every day of the week, but putting in different orders starts to become a lot more challenging, because you're maybe not as prepared for it physically, but mentally you've got to wrap your head around slightly different things. Um, but yeah, I mean, to me, I think it's great because, like, as well, especially when you're young, like, uh, I think you pick up things probably quicker and absorb things a lot more when you're young, because like everything's so new and you're not used to it. Like,
yeah,
I'm sure I'll race Super League a bit more, and like the formats start to become a bit more like them a little bit better. Um, but I think again, just it doesn't really matter like what way around the order is. You still swim, bike, and run, but it's just the fact that it's challenging you in different ways. And I think the whole idea of the series is that there's different types of events, but ultimately you come out at the end with someone who's a winner. And I really believe that, like, you know the person who wins at the end is like the strongest triathlete or the best triathlete, because you know it's you're constantly going to get exposed through swim, bike, run. And so, like, I mean, like, there's often like, oh well, he only won or she only won because like they're a good runner and the bike came together and the swim wasn't very fast, or
yeah,
like, oh well, they only won because they got away on the bike but they didn't actually run that all these kind of things. All those scenarios are just kind of wiped out, because like the thing is, you got to consistently be good across the board.
yeah,
um and like, it just shows like you come out at the end, like I say, and you've got these two winners. Like, they ultimately deserve to be where they are. And I mean, like, it's obviously a pretty good um kind of benchmark, because you got Georgia second in the world, you got Hayden third in the world. Like, I mean, Alex won it last year. He's second in the world or whatever. Like, you look at the people who are doing it. I've got no doubt that if Leo Berger did it, if Flora came back and did it a bit more, Christian, etc., all these people, like, they're going to race and be at the top end of that, but be the top end of ITU. And I think it just shows, like, the athletes who are at the very top of Super League are probably at the top of World Triathlon, and that's for a reason, because, like, they're the best.
Yeah, and I think like what you said, it just makes it so much more entertaining from a fan's perspective as well.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you get a lot more media exposure through Super League than you would like just normally on just like the world stage, because people who aren't like engaged in the triathlon sport throughout the year, because there's not really many like massive triathlons on, like having a regular schedule obviously makes it so much more entertaining for like the average like person just to like tune in on TV. I'm pretty sure it's on BBC or something.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
BBC, Eurosport, there's
yeah,
YouTube and all sorts now. They're
yeah,
they're really putting it out broadcast wise.
yeah. And I think even better, like they come to like a city in every like country, because I went and watched it in, oh god, it must have been in the summer in the arena in London.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure if you were racing. Were you racing then?
I raced. That would have been the Arena Games, was it?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. No, I didn't race the London Arena Games. I will hopefully, yeah, next year. But yeah, again, like you say, they're putting it in some big locations, city locations as well, which is great for getting people in. So yeah, they do a good job.
yeah. So obviously, aside from triathlon, you're actually quite a keen runner. I've seen on your YouTube that you
Yeah.
that you decided to compete in cross country this year. So what would you
I've
say?
competed on.
Well, I was going to say, like, what would you say? What was your reasoning behind competing in cross country this year? Like, why did you decide to give it a go?
Uh, well, it was more two events. I raced the Northeast Cross Country Champs, which
Yeah,
I've done every year since I was pretty much like a under 13. And I'm racing Ribble Valley 10K next week
yeah,
on the 27th of December, which is probably, as you know, a very, very quick one. I think Mark Scott has the record there. So yeah, basically after the Worlds, like it was frustrating because kind of we kind of got the approach coming down from altitude slightly wrong, um, going into Abu Dhabi at the under 23s, and it was a bit gutting because I knew I was unbelievably fit, probably the fittest I'd been all year, but I wasn't able to show that whatsoever because like simply coming down from altitude is quite individual, and that was like, I've done it multiple times now, but we knew it was kind of going to be risky, and obviously I don't particularly follow the any different than the normal trend whereby like I think I raced on day 4 and I just was flat, like just not much there. But I basically I was a bit like I was just a bit like ugh, like I kind of wanted a lot more. It was annoying, and I knew how fit I was and how hard I'd worked at altitude. So rather than kind of throw that fitness away, I really wanted just to target some running events. So obviously the first one I went for was a cross country, which was 12K. That was 2 weeks after the world champs. So again, that was like my initial thought was like, pull back the bike and then swimming a little bit, really focus on strength and conditioning when I was at home, and just nail the running. Just kind of swim and bike for fun, but nail the running and really go after it a bit. And obviously, I can therefore capitalize a little bit on the altitude benefit because that's such a golden period, that like 2 or 3 weeks coming down. So I did that pretty well, ran very well at the cross country, and I'd just around that cross country, I'd signed up for Ribble Valley, the 10K. So another probably 17 days or something. But yeah, that'll make a period of about 4.5 weeks of very specific run training and very, very light in the bike and swim areas, pretty heavy in strength and conditioning. But yeah, the purpose behind that, like I say, it was to make a little bit of a gain from the altitude in
yeah,
my running, but also the fact that like I didn't really want to just sit around like when I worked that hard at
Yeah.
altitude for 3 weeks and then I couldn't even like show it. It was so annoying. So then like it was great to be able to come home and like really put my mind towards something else. Kind of like move past the worlds a little bit and like and go for something else. But I think really like the 10K is a big one because like like nowadays, if I go and run in the middle of the season, I will always have done something before it. Like I turn up to like occasion in the summer, I might do a track meet like the local one on a Wednesday night, but there's a good chance I've probably done like 3 hours of training in the morning or something like that. It's like you can give a good effort, but it's not like a full account of yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing is like I love to. I've just loved trying to see like what I can actually do when I'm a bit fresher. Like I'm turning up to sessions feeling good, haven't got the fatigue in my legs, enjoying it as well, which is huge because at this time of the year it's not very nice weather. It's nice to have something that I'm enjoying, focusing on. But obviously with the 10K, it's great because it can hopefully, as long as things go well, like I set a fantastic benchmark, and that's basically like you know theoretically kind of the best 10K I could get out like on the 27th of December, and then it sets a really really good like benchmark of like this is what you can do when you've prepared just for running. And like I say, like hopefully leading everything goes well, like I'm in good shape, but that then creates a like a benchmark, but also hopefully the goal is to try and go sub 30. That then creates like a confidence if that's then achieved going into next year. So yeah, that's kind of the reasons I guess behind that. But that was all me. That was not my coach's uh like initial plan.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of quite adaptive from what it was originally going to be.
So the goal is sub 30 then.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's the goal.
That's a good goal.
Yeah.
I'm nowhere near that, but I but I recently did I run last weekend and did 35:11, so
Okay.
I'm getting
Yeah.
there.
Well.
Slowly getting there.
Yeah, no, yeah, man. It just takes time. I mean, running's
Yeah.
a wonderful thing, though. Like, consistency over time, you can improve a lot. My brother went from basically being like a couch potato, and within 4 or 5 years, he was running lower 15 minutes for the 5K. He's still only 16 at the minute, so
Really?
I mean, he ran low, nearly 32 flat at Ribble last year as a 15-year-old. And like, it just shows you, like, he wasn't interested in exercise, never did barely anything, and that transformation within like 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years, but it is that just, again, it comes back to that process, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah.
you ultimately, I think a lot of people have got the ability to go exceptionally quick. Um, and it's just about like being patient over time.
Yeah. I only started running when I was 18, and I was literally like your brother. Like until the age of 18, I did no exercise,
Yeah,
and then I started running. So I've only been running for 3 years now, and I got
yeah,
to
you still got
35:11. So
still going. You'll still improve at some rate at the
yeah,
minute, sure.
exactly. Yeah, and like I think especially like now I've got a coach. Like it just makes it so much easier.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Um, so obviously you said, I think that's quite interesting what you said about the altitude thing, because on last week's podcast that's coming out this week, if that makes sense. So people
Yeah.
who are listening, it's last week's one, but it's coming out like tonight, I think. Um, I actually had a guy on called Adam Craig, and he said he came down
Oh,
from
yeah,
altitude, and he had this like exactly the same experience as you. He raced the 10K in at Highgate, which is a track meet, and
yeah,
he said he just felt absolutely flat coming down. But
yeah.
then like 3 weeks later, he felt the effects. So he said like
Well, you
next
won a
time,
marathon, didn't you, in Valencia?
yeah. So he just ran 2:13. So
Yeah,
yeah, mad, absolutely crazy.
yeah,
But yeah, he said that he was the same with altitude. Like he put so much hard working, and then everyone says, oh, you're gonna be like at peak performance when you come down, but some people just take a while to adjust back to
mm,
sea level. So yeah, it's quite cool to see that not everyone finds altitude, well, coming back from altitude that easy, because I've done it and it was pretty fun.
Yeah, yeah. Like I love coming back down, but it's there's all sorts of factors involved. Though that's the thing.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, like for me, I traveled from the west coast of America all the way to UAE. So I had, I had to travel, most of the way across the world with an 11-hour time difference,
yeah,
and then race on day 4. Like perhaps had I been in Font Romeo, I don't know, take for example, if I was going to Paris, for example, and I'd been in Font Romeo and I just had a couple hours drive, like, again, would that be any different? And that's the thing, there's so many variables involved in what you do. But I think the general kind of thing is that, like, kind of day 8, 9, 10-ish, yeah, maybe 9 or 10 onwards is exceptionally good. And those
yeah,
initial couple days when you come down, like, it's so noticeably easy that, like, even if you've got fatigue in the body, it feels mint. But then it's like there's kind of this little lull, which is weird, and then like it just spikes, and then you get
yeah.
this amazing couple of weeks. So yeah, again though, it's just learning, refining it, and the more that you go, the more you learn, ultimately.
Yeah, I remember coming down from. I only went to St. Moritz for like 10 days. Yeah, so I remember when I came back down from St. Moritz, like the first easy run that I went on was like 7 minute pace, and it just felt like I was walking. It was like
Yeah,
so
yeah,
weird. And then like a couple of days after, you just feel a bit dead.
yeah,
And then you kind of like gradually just get back to normal. Um,
yeah,
so you said obviously you're based out quite a bit more now in the US.
yeah.
What is the reasoning behind choosing the US to train?
Uh, I mean, big reason is obviously US coach. So yeah, again, that kind of you know has led me to go into the US a little bit at the start of this year, and then just so happened that I returned back a fair bit more at the back end of the year. And I mean, next year I'm going to spend an awful lot of time in the States. But yeah, I've learned to like love it a bit more as I've gone. Like, I mean, obviously I think the weather has a big impact. Obviously the people that you're around as well. But I just really enjoy the training. It's also exceptionally consistent. But you kind of the places where I stay, you're still within like normal civilization. It's not like too remote like some training camps can be. So you can still enjoy the normal things of like just an enjoyable life. But um, yeah, but then obviously you can kind of get that consistency in as well, and moving around a little bit as well. Like we're mainly between two places now, Santa Fe in New Mexico and Tucson in Arizona. So obviously one's altitude, one's in the sun, and yeah, just really really enjoying spending more time out there, to be honest.
So you've recently started your own YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So what was the reasoning behind this?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I think I said it probably in the intro to the very first one I did. For me, it was kind of just to create a log, a diary, if you wish, that sort of thing, as to some of the stuff that I've done, and like kind of, I'd hope to do a little bit more consistent, but as the season went, like, and I started traveling, I couldn't get it in quite as much. However, like, just creating a little bit of like almost like a time log of the journey from coming out of juniors to ultimately getting to where I've got to go. And I kind of wish I had started it coming out of juniors, because it would have made that transition a little bit nicer, because by the time I started I'd already had some better results. But it was done when I was still 19 at the start. And I think ultimately, like, I looked and I thought, like, when I was 10, 11, whatever, 12, like, and I looked up to, say the Brownlees or something like that, like, it, you can read books and you can do this and that, but like, the thing is, sometimes, like, I think now, especially with the digital kind of age, most people want to kind of see things online. And, ultimately, if I looked online when I was like 10, 11, 12 years old, I'd have really no idea, like, what guys like, say, Johnny and Al were doing, at that time period, let alone what they'd done when they were 18 or 19.
Yeah.
So kind of being able to put out, some like, videos of just like what I've done at certain times, like, like bits about me and just stuff like that. It's not necessarily for sponsors. It's certainly not to make money. It's just, it's just a way of like logging that journey. And like I say, I actually wish I had started earlier. It's something I really, really enjoy. And yeah, there's a local lad, Jamie, who like, does the videos for me, which are fantastic. And yeah, I just think it's a really, really fun little kind of project, really.
Yeah, nice. So I think that leads quite into the next section of the podcast, which is the no context track section. So
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
this is the section where I've sent you a photo, and
Yeah,
it will appear on the screen for all the viewers that are watching.
yeah,
If you're listening on Spotify, make sure to head over to the YouTube channel to check it out there. It's George Runs. So anyway, can you just give a bit of an explanation behind the context of this photo?
yeah. I'll make sure I've got it on my screen as well. But yeah, no, it's I'm actually I'm in my Norwegian kit there as well from my friend. Following that Norwegian hype chain, eh? But yeah, that is the last hill on a famous group ride in Tucson, in Arizona. It's the well, they say a group ride, but it's the oldest group ride in America. But it's basically just an absolute like smash fest. And in the summer, you can get 200 people basically doing what we call as like a chain gang. But it's essentially like a 40-minute section, the same section every Saturday morning. You meet at like a local Starbucks, you roll out to the start, and then it's just like a smash fest for like 40 minutes, and that's probably 25 meters before the finish, which is basically just this like gradual climb which kicks up just towards the end. So yeah, that's what that is. But yeah, good memories. A nice sunny day out in Tucson.
That sounds cool. So if you had to choose between swimming, running, or cycling, and you were only able to do one sport for the rest of your life, what one would it be and why?
Yeah, man, there's just the amount of context you have to put into a question like this. But yeah, you get asked this sort of thing all the time. I think each of them has their own kind of like unique. Do you know what I mean? Like their own
Yeah.
unique joy. You know what I mean? There's very few things beat swimming open water in the summer in a beautiful lake, and yet like riding in the mountains or running some awesome trails somewhere. There's very special things about each one. And yeah, I mean, I think it comes down towards like biking or running for me. But I think like I would probably say biking just for the pure thing that like obviously you can use different bikes. But you can go and ride for endless hours. Like the amount of like things and places and people that I meet through 4 or 5 hour rides, when I'm away, like you really get to see what like a country is like. It's one of the best ways to experience it. And like running likewise, you can experience some awesome things, and it's so easy running. Like it's the one thing that's just so easy, but at the same time, like you can't go, you're not going to be out there 5 hours, seeing 100 miles worth of of terrain. So yeah, I think biking's got to be the one that you kind of carry on doing. And like I say, there's all sorts of ways that you can bike as well. So yeah, it'd be fun. Swimming's the only one where I'm a bit like I love swimming, but yeah, it's just the like going up and down and up and down. Like the thing is for me, like I can happily go at the pool if I was like not meant to be training, but I just start doing some sort of set because it
Yeah.
just feels so like rhythmic and the right thing to do. But yeah, biking's class for just exploring.
Okay. That leads quite nicely onto the final section of the show,
Yeah.
where it's the questions that we ask all of our guests. So, if you were stranded on a desert island, and you had to spend your final days with someone, whether they're fictional or factual, who would it be and why?
Phew. I tell you what, this is the bit that I didn't read on the on the questions, but it's yeah, I guess you couldn't go far wrong having a chef make some nice meals if they were able to. Yeah, actually, I tell you what, there's a really interesting, really interesting guy who I'm reading a little bit about at the minute. Kind of his books. He's called Mo Gauda, who not many people might not know him, but he used to be kind of the head of Google X and all these crazy things. But yeah, he's a fascinating guy, kind of, I guess you could say, psychologist and philosopher, businessman, all sorts of things in one. But yeah, he's really, really fascinating. It's such a hard question to answer. Uh, but yeah, interestingly, outside of triathlon, I would say, maybe a Jordan or a Kobe, but that's too many. That's four people, so I'll have to bring four. But
Have a
yeah,
party on the island.
yeah, something like that. No, I don't know. It's a hard one. You might get annoyed though if you're stranded with them forever. So you have to choose the right person, eh?
Yeah, exactly. So related to racing or just training in general, do you have any funny stories, like the funniest one that you can think of?
Again, probably worth thinking in these well in advance.
Should have done the pre-read.
Yeah, I read it. Like I say, I read everything, but I managed to miss these last two questions off the bottom here. Um, God, I'm trying to think. Do you know what it is? Again, you get asked these sort of questions, and like the amount of just subtle, funny things that just set you off when you train them. Like, do you know what I mean? There's so many of them. I mean, like what I would say is like some of the best times were like just like traveling around with Super League and just some of the stuff we do. Like I remember we were out on this ride. There's three of us. A girl called Shan Rainsley, who's a British triathlete, and Emil Holm, who's Danish. I was rooming with him, and yeah, we were doing this ride like when we were like in travel in Munich, and we were just out, and then like we came across this lake, and we'd been doing dares or something, and then yeah, we just basically decided like I think we played rock paper scissors to who would jump in, and yeah, we basically I lost, and then I ended up going in and all my cycling stuff. Absolutely horrid riding home. But thing is, the water was dead lush, so then the other two of them followed me in, and everyone ended up going in this lake and was swimming around in the cycling gear, and then ended up going home with some soggy chamois. But yeah, there's just numerous things like that, man. Like
Yeah.
it's a cracking sport for meeting people, and yeah, there's a lot of hours that are to be passed by. So yeah, little things that can make it funnier in there are awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on and having a
Nice.
chat with me. And yeah, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week.